Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Let the record show all members of council are present. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This evening, we do have a number of public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions. If you'd like to speak to the council, please step to the microphone, give your name and address for the record. This is a time and place for a public hearing as advertised in the matter of Resolution 13-203, vacating and disposing of that part of 42nd Avenue lying east of the east right-of-way line of Indian Creek, except the west 244.5 feet lying east of the east right-of-way line of Indian Creek, and west of the west property line commonly known as 113 42nd Avenue. Is proof of publication on file?
It is on file.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Are there any oral protests this matter?
Your Honor, it has been proposed or requested by the applicant this matter be continued until the next council meeting, which would be August 26th.
So, no one would speak on it tonight?
If you want to have them speak, they can, but.
Okay. The person that's proposed this has asked us that this public hearing be continued till the next meeting. So,
motion to propose that the public hearing on the street vacation be continued until, what was the date again?
August 26th.
August 26, 2013, 7 p.m.
Second.
is there a discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This is the time and place for a public hearing as advertised in the matter of Ordinance 6188, amending the zoning map as adopted by reference in Section 15.02.070 by changing the district designations of lots 4 through 7, Block 39, Beer Subdivision from I-1 Light Industrial to R2 Two-Family Residential as set forth and defined in Chapters 15.20 and 15.09. Is proof of publication on file?
It is on file.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Are there any oral protests this matter? People speaking against? Anyone here speaking in favor? That ends the public hearing. Was the council's pleasure?
Motion to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This is the time and place for a public hearing as advertised in the matter of Ordinance 6189, amending the zoning map as adopted by reference in Section 15.02.070 by rezoning property legally described as part of the southeast quarter of Section 3-74-44, more particularly described on Attachment A, from PC Plan Commercial to I-2 General Industrial District adjacent to 2520 and 2608 South 24th Street, Council Bluffs, Iowa, property as set forth and defined in Chapters 15.18 and 15.21. Is proof of publication on file?
It is on file.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Are there any oral protests this matter? People speaking against? Anyone here speaking in favor?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, we would like to offer an amendment.
I need your name and address for the record, please.
Don Quinn, 2608 South 24th Street, Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon would read that into the.
Okay, I'm going to read the amendment. The way it would read is that rezoning shall be conditioned upon the property owner or its assigns pursuing the extension of the South 24th Street landscaping plan in a fashion consistent with the plan as presented to the city with the Iowa West Foundation, and at a minimum proceed with Plan 1 as presented. This rezoning shall continue to be conditional upon the ongoing maintenance of the landscaping installed until the city relieves the property owner of this obligation.
That's the amendment. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Okay, discussion on the amendment.
So do we know what the Iowa West landscaping plan actually is?
Well, we know what their 24th Street plan is and if they will extend that around. And if they won't, then at minimum, they would need to go ahead with their Plan 1.
All right. Is that what the motion is, if Iowa West does, all right.
They just need to pursue it, and
Thought
if they know they're not going to do that,
Thought you were
then,
proposing that Sapp Brothers had
Good.
to do what Iowa West is doing, and I don't know that we know what Iowa West is doing yet.
No.
Okay, I'm,
Second.
wait, we have not ended the public hearing, by the way.
Right, we just needed to get on record that this was what I was going to propose, and that they're fine with that.
We are. I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Anyone else speaking this evening? That ends the public hearing.
Like to
Now, the council's made and what we have is a motion to amend on the agenda. Discussion on the amendment.
Second the motion to amend.
I think Nate did, yeah.
Oh, did he? I'll third it.
So do we know when the plans will be visible? I mean, are they working, is Iowa West working on, there's
That's
a
what they-
beautification streetscape going on down there.
Yeah, the 24th has already started, and they'll
Right.
already be doing, according to the streetscape plan, they'll already be doing what would be the southwest corner where the statue and everything is. So, this would mean that they would need to wrap the other corner. So they need to pursue it with them and see if they would accept that and extend it around onto Mid-America Drive on the north side.
But the bottom line is there will be improvements, there will be landscaping, there will, it will
Yes,
look,
if Iowa
it will look
West
nice.
does not intend to do that,
Yeah.
then they will move forward with their option 1, which is installing 25 trees along there.
The planning commission, the ordinance has been approved by the planning commission with option 1. What you've written in is basically an option 2. If option 1 is not met, there's an option 2. I mean, there is an option 2, and then it'll always be an option 1.
But the Community Development Department was still recommending denying.
Correct.
And, and Don had said, and obviously that, that's the stance they pretty much have to take, because that was the decision council made, it was to rezone that PC. Just in my view, that 80-foot or 70-foot strip isn't going to significantly change what's happening down there. But having Sapp beautify that entrance into Council Bluffs will significantly change something down there. So that's the reason I'm proposing it, is because I feel like that with them agreeing to work with the city to enhance that corridor and to make that intersection look nice, that would be a visible change we need.
I am willing at this stage to support it at second reading. I do hope, though, however, that there'll be more discussion about expanding option 1. I think in the end, it's a good faith first offer in exchange for the public giving them that right, but I think it will take more than 25 trees to get me to look on it favorably at third reading. But I appreciate the good faith they've shown, and so I'll support it at this stage and hope for further discussion in the interim.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance as amended, any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This is a time and place for a public hearing as advertised in the matter of ordinance 6190, amending chapter 15.28 PR Plan Residential Overlay by amending section 15.28-010 Statement of Intent to add 06, provide a method for adaptive reuse of vacant public buildings for residential use, and by adding new section 15.28.055, adaptive reuse of vacant public buildings. Is proof of publication on file?
It is on
Have
file.
any written protests been received?
None received.
Are there any oral protests this matter? People speaking against?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Deborah Peterson, 215 South Main Street, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Speaking on behalf of Selden Company, a developer who's done a number of projects here in the community. I spoke on their behalf at the Planning Commission meeting. After reviewing the ordinance as proposed by the city staff, the opinion of Selden as a developer is that it is too restrictive going forward on any project, that it's very difficult within those limitations to look at each project under those guidelines. So it's maybe just too restrictive going forward for other projects. And Selden is familiar with different projects that they've done in different neighboring communities. So our recommendation to the Planning Commission at that time, and our recommendation to you, is to take no action on this and not implement anything. As far as the policy statements, those can be implemented in your comprehensive plan when that's revised down the road. But basically, the current zoning, when you're applying with the planned residential overlay, will allow the city substantial control, yet allow the developer some flexibility on the lot sizes. So restricting each one is just probably too specific in nature. So we would ask that you take no action. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking tonight? Against? Against?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Dave Christensen, 2735 North Broadway. As president of the North Broadway Neighborhood Association, I'm here to just express our frustration with this whole issue. This has got Ted Selden and Martha Bruckner written all over it, and it's another backdoor attempt to get apartments built on this site. This is an R1 neighborhood all the way around that property, and we want to make sure that it stays that way. This ordinance, I think, was probably written specifically for gun school, so it will impact our neighborhood immediately, but it will eventually affect the Walnut Grove neighborhood, the Lewis and Clark neighborhood, and any other areas where traditional grade schools are located. There aren't any other publicly owned buildings that would fall
Sir,
into
you have to
this
sit
area.
down. See, all the way to the back, there's a seat. Thank you.
Passing the amendment will merely allow the school district to avoid their responsibilities as property owners. No other R1 property owners would be allowed to build apartments on their sites. Why should the school system be allowed to do that? You have the opportunity to ensure that the Council Bluffs School District is going to continue this policy, if they're going to continue this policy of closing traditional neighborhood grade schools in favor of busing and warehousing our children in the bunker that is now College View, then at least their board must be responsible enough to remove the non-compliant structures that are appropriate for R1 development. We also urge the council to reject this amendment, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I know you're concerned about vandalism to the building. The neighborhood is extremely concerned about it. The immediate neighbors are keeping a close watch on it and don't hesitate at all to call authorities when problems occur. But we do think that the council needs to make sure that this property remains R1 and appropriate R1 development can occur there. So we strongly urge the council to reject this amendment.
Thank you.
Dave, I do have just one question for you. The letter that you read, was that from you personally, or was it from the association?
The association.
So the association read it and signed off on the letter you read tonight?
I don't know that they actually read it, but
Were they aware of the verbiage in it? I mean, they knew what you were going to say about the warehousing
probably
of children and all
not.
that.
We haven't had a chance to meet in the last week or so. We've been
I just
concerned
like to
about
make
other
sure that
things.
I'm hearing your neighborhoods words or your words. And I think, I just want it clearly in my notes, whether it's Dave saying this or whether it's the North Broadway Association.
It's
that-
me saying this on behalf of the association. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Anyone else speaking this evening?
Chuck Willard, 256 Linden Avenue, just up the street from gun school. I do not understand why this is even before the city council. This is not a city council problem. This is a school district problem. The last I understood, this is a country of the people, by the people, for the people. Our neighborhood association and all of the community around there does not want apartments in this school. I do not understand why people do not understand this. It is a school board problem, not you guys' problem. This property has been vacant now for, what, almost 2 years? And it looks basically just the same as it did 2 years ago. I mean, the school has been keeping it up. The lawn has been cut, the weeds have been cut. There's been a few broken windows out, which is understandable. But as far as I see it, the school district would sell this property for $1. They got it for nothing. So they just want to dump it. And as far as I see with this ordinance proposal, yeah, technically, this is just a spot zoning for gun school. Yeah, it's going to affect other school districts and everything, but right now, this is a gun school problem. And I think you all need to listen to your neighborhood association and to the community that is in this area, that we don't need it. There are very, very, very many properties in this city that we can put a facility like this. Why do we stick this into a very well-established, older residential community? It just doesn't make any sense. I was off today from work. I spent all day working at my house. I mean, from 7 o'clock this morning until 4 o'clock this afternoon, keeping my property up and looking nice. And I just do not understand why we want to ram this down our throat when the community doesn't want it. Like I say, you guys represent us, and we are the voting public. We don't want it. That's all I've got to say is consider this. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer
I
them.
don't know that I have any questions, and obviously I'm running for office, and so everybody tells me, be quiet, don't say anything. And and those people that know me know that's not my nature. I just don't do that.
That's fine.
You know, I look at the situation, I've talked to Dave about it, and I've talked to the neighbors about it. I've never varied in my opinion. I sat for 15 years and watched Kern School's gym deteriorate and deteriorate the neighborhood around it. Why is it our issue? One, they're asking for a zoning change, and that's what we do, and so that's what we're required to do. And so we've been brought into
You're
it
caught
because
between
the
a
school
rock and a hard
district.
spot.
Nobody's going to take it for $1 because it's got will have a property tax liability once it goes away from the school district. School district doesn't pay property taxes, so they really don't have any motivation to sell the property. They just let it sit and deteriorate. And honest to God, I think it tears your neighborhood apart by doing that. Now, you say they keep it up good. I went out to see Dave the other day. I drove out there. The weeds are 4 foot high in the back. They have mowed the front. Probably 30% of the windows are broken and boarded up with plywood. Now what happens this winter, and we've got a real serious homeless problem in downtown Council Bluffs, and they're in Bayless Park, And when it gets cold, they're going to start looking for shelter. And where they're going to look for shelter is where there's a vacant building. And that's gun school. And they get in there, they're going to start a little fire in some type of container to keep warm, and then it's going to get kicked over. And then firemen get called, and the fireman's life are at risk because this vacant building sits there forever. Now, do we repurpose it? Do we let it deteriorate and bring down the value of your surrounding homes? And that's the quandary we're left with. And you're right, it's a problem created by the Council Bluffs schools, but I don't know that they have an answer other than to sell it to somebody who can repurpose it, get it back on the tax rolls, save the taxpayers of Council Bluffs who pay public school property taxes the expense of tearing it down. I've seen the demolition cost is $293,000.
Yep, I understand.
People say turn it into single-family residential lots. The width of a residential lot's 50 feet, so with that property, I think you can get 6 homes on that site. And no offense intended for the neighborhood, but you can't sell a 60,000 foot or a $60,000 lot on North Broadway. And so it just sits vacant and it deteriorates, and it's not good for anybody the way it is. It's my personal opinion, and I'm not speaking for the council, I'm speaking for myself.
Yep. I just drove by there tonight on my way here because I go by it up Linden and down Linden every day. And the yard's been mowed, the weeds have been cut in the back. My understanding is, does the school have a security system in it? The way I understood is they do.
Well,
I can't answer that.
Okay. I understand that there is a security system in there if anybody were to get into that building.
well, even so, the taxpayers are paying every time they mow it. They'll keep the utilities on so the pipes don't freeze. I'm personally paying for
Exactly.
that out of my tax dollars, and it doesn't solve the long-term problem. The problem's still there. The building's still there. I would encourage the neighborhood, if, I will tell you that after we voted the last time to deny the rezoning, I got more phone calls and more email from people that were livid that we let one little quadrant of the city determine what happens for the whole city, that's their taxpayer dollars. And I really did receive these emails. I was surprised how many people were mad at me because we allowed a very small group of people to speak for the entire 64,000 population. And I realize it's in your neighborhood, but you say that this can go anywhere. So as long as it's not in your backyard, it's fine.
No, it's not.
So when the next neighborhood comes in and says, we don't want senior living in our neighborhood, and we say, well, okay, we told them they didn't have to have it, I guess you won't have it there. That isn't, that's not organized growth for a community, and it's not acknowledging that our population is aging and we need this housing. So I guess, the thing about it is that it is our problem in that we have to send the police out there. We have to send the fire department out there if need be. We have to monitor that. It's the entire population's problem. It's not just North Broadway. And I do understand, that you're involved. You want to protect your property values in your neighborhood, but that property sitting there vacant forever is not going to solve it. And I would encourage the neighborhood, though, that because I do believe you have a right to cause effect in your neighborhood, start trying to get some money together and buy that property. I mean, if you guys really want to control the property, then own the property. That's the best way you can control it, is to buy it, because it can't sit there forever as a vacant building to appease this neighborhood. It's not going to happen. At some point, something has to happen with the building. And I just absolutely encourage you, if you can start fundraisers, if you can collectively come up with the money to purchase that property, please do exactly that so that you can have what you want there. But in the meantime, the school board has an obligation to try to sell it to whoever they can sell it to. And just because they may find somebody to take it that isn't going to put apartments there, and it may be a whole lot worse. They can sell it to another school, private school, that is a school for children that can't be in regular school because they've been expelled. I mean, there are a lot of things they can do without this zoning change. So I just want you to be aware. There are worse things that can happen. So if you want to make sure that doesn't happen, please try. Get the money together and buy the property, and then you can control it.
Okay. Has anybody that you know of come forward thinking of anything like townhomes there or anything? Because, I mean, anything residential would be wonderful for the community.
But again, I mean, the problem with that is, again,
The
your
demolition
demolition
costs.
cost is so high, you're not gonna be able to recoup, so
And
no developer is gonna
that's
wanna
because
go
of
in
the
and lose.
asbestos in that building. That's
Everything,
why the
right.
demolition is so,
Exactly right.
so expensive.
One of the other additional concerns is North Broadway is a major street, quite a
Yeah.
bit of traffic. It's our north entrance into town.
The entranceways in there would be a major problem. They
And
would have to have, basically where Gun is right now, a rear entry.
well, or a frontage road, and so one of the difficulties, and I didn't think about this until the engineers explained it to me, but, and maybe a lot of other folks are in the same boat I was, but to put in that frontage road, because you can't have 6 curb cuts.
No, because you'd have to
that's too
knock-
many drives around that corner.
You'd have to knock Broadway down to about
Yep.
20 miles an hour.
You'd probably have to knock it 10 miles down on the
Exactly.
speed limit.
If
Yeah.
you had that many frontage entrances,
Yep, so that frontage road, they tell me, because they're much better at math than I am,
Yeah.
say that'd knock it down from 6 to 4 homes, so now you're down to 4 lots. And so the difficulty from a taxpayer perspective is we'd have to sell those lots, or the school district would have to sell those lots. Really, it doesn't much matter, it all comes out of your property tax. Whether this board controls it or the school board controls it, it still comes out of your and my pocket.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
understand.
So it's
It's a
one,
very
left hand or the right
yeah.
hand, but, you know, the thing that it would have to overcome if that's to be torn down is how do you get somebody to pay $60,000 for a lot that's about the size of my lot in an older part of town where the houses are 10 feet from one another? Usually when people build a new house, they don't want to be quite so close.
yeah, I understand.
So that's tough.
It's a very
So it's
difficult
tough.
property.
And the other thing I just briefly want to say is I wasn't allowed to vote on the gun school issue because at the time I worked, my employer at the time was general legal counsel for the Selden Company, the proposed developer. And I no longer work for them, so that my conflict of interest in my profession is no longer present, so I can speak about it just in case anyone wonders. But the thing I want to say is tonight's issue is about a general topic. Fair enough, it would apply to gun, but I just want to
Yep.
make certain people understand gun is not before us tonight. What's before us tonight is whether we adopt a policy as part of our building strategy, part of our overall zoning of when buildings become vacant, and it's not just in our town, not lots of towns across southwest Iowa and indeed the nation, have these old school buildings or old city halls. And they're no longer needed for whatever reason, whether it's they don't meet Americans with Disability Act requirements, because a lot of them used to be built with several
Yep.
stories, with narrow stairs. If you
Yep.
have an old house, you know what I mean. It's
Yep.
hard enough walking up them if you can walk. If you can't walk or you have difficulties walking, you're not going to be able to have access, so it's not legal to keep those open without considerable cost of elevators and the like. So what do we do with them? That's a big problem. So
I know, it's very difficult.
So that's what's before us tonight. Do we come up with, and rather than leave it to staff, if we can we come up with an objective test that would meet most situations so that if somebody comes in and says, hey, I see this vacant building's there, I'm thinking of buying it, I want to do X. Well, we have a policy in place that says, so that person has an objective test, okay, before they spend too much time and money on it, is that feasible under the current rules? And maybe there isn't a one-size-fits-all test. We've looked at 8 different options now are before us
Yeah.
tonight, and a lot of them, again, involve a lot of math and division.
Yeah.
But if we come up with one of those, it's just, do we come up with an overall policy, or do we keep looking at each on a case-by-case basis? That's what's in front of us tonight. If it doesn't pass, we'll going forward, until it changes, we'll look at each on a case-by-case basis. Or should we try, or is it even possible to come up with some sort of general rule so that we don't have to do that and people can better understand what's expected?
Yeah.
And it's a tough question, but that's really what's in front of us tonight. But
Yeah, I understand.
I just want you to
And
understand
I
where
want the council to understand that I am not just here speaking for my community. I mean, I'm speaking for the other communities too. I mean, I will be on their bandwagon too. it's not just our little northeast corner out there, which isn't a little northeast corner. We're a pretty good subdivision or a division of the Council Bluffs. So we would just like to see it remain a residential area. I'm not opposed to, like I say, townhomes or condos or anything like that that is going to be residential, but we just gotta quit on this housing stuff. It is just, there's got to be a stopping point to all this. I don't get it. It's happening across the country, and the middle income person is just getting squashed. I mean, we just basically have no say anymore. And, you know, I just put it before the council that this just needs to remain residential.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else speaking this evening? That ends the public hearing. Was the council's pleasure?
Motion to concur with Planning Commission and reject the adaptive reuse of vacant buildings ordinance.
Second.
Is there discussion?
And by rejecting it, which I will support, that means, just like what I explained, it'll stay at the status quo of each one will be, each application will be on a case-by-case basis. And I think that I really wanted a rule, a general rule, but looking at the 8 different options, every situation's different, you know. Like Mark Twain said, buy real estate, they're not making any more of it. You know, it's, every piece of ground's different, and so to come up with a one-size-fits rule, which is great in many cases, I just don't think is possible here. So I think we've got to do the tough thing of a case-by-case basis.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This is the time and place for a public hearing. It's advertised in the matter of ordinance 6191, amending the zoning map as adopted by reference to section 15.02.070 by rezoning that part of the northeast quarter of section 14 and the southeast quarter of section 11, township 74 north, range 44 west of the 5th PM, Potawatomi County, Iowa, being more particularly described below, from R1 single-family residential district to R3 low-density multifamily residential district, as set forth and defined in chapters 15.08B and 15.10. Is proof of publication on file?
It is on.
Have any written protests been received?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 6 letters of opposition have been received by the city clerk's office.
You want those received and filed?
Yes, please.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody here to speak against? Anyone here speaking in favor?
You missed it.
Yes.
Are you for or against?
They're against.
How do I know? Is it a secret or
I don't know.
secret handshake that I don't know?
Somebody bring Matt.
Those
Did
against.
folks understand what's up?
Maybe
Okay, well, this is a public hearing, and this is an opportunity. What I did was I asked people who may be against the project, they could stand up and discuss why they're against it.
So if you're against
Or those who are in favor it may stand up and say they're in favor of it.
Okay, so is this the mobile home park?
This is the
Yes.
rezone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're,
It's the Manawa, yes.
By Lake Manawa. So if you have some concerns, this is the time to express them.
We do.
well, Deb, why don't you go ahead and sit down and,
That's where we're all looking at you. I'm like, well, it's on there too. It's on there twice.
Yeah.
They're different pieces, yeah.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Luke Northwell, and I reside at 115 Pelican Drive here in Council Bluffs. I'm the president of the Pelican Cove Homeowners Association. I'm here tonight with other homeowners to discuss our concerns about the proposed North Lake Development Project. I would ask that all the concerned homeowners in attendance tonight please stand up. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm here tonight with Mark Jenrue, Ruth Munger, and Suzanne Winter to talk to you about the proposed development and our thoughts regarding how this proposed development impacts Lake Manawa and our neighborhoods. We are all in favor of having the trailer park replaced. For many years, this has been an eyesore as well as a black eye to the entrance of Lake Manawa. Lake Manawa is a tourist destination as well as Iowa's busiest lake. We believe that the city should take all necessary steps to capitalize on the tourism dollars that Lake Manawa can generate, as well as maximizing the property values around the lake. Lake Manawa is a valuable asset of the city of Council Bluffs. The gateway to the park down 11th Street has never shown what a wonderful asset the lake can be. The improvements and developments made along Veterans Memorial Highway from Interstate 80 to the bridge over the Missouri River have all enhanced the area around Lake Manawa. We now have destination shopping with Metro Crossings in the marketplace, a state-of-the-art facility when Google was added, which has brought additional benefits to this community. Many improvements have been made to the auto dealerships around Lake Manawa. Fox Run Landing, as well as all the landscaping done on Veterans Memorial Highway, have added to this area. Most recently, Lake Manawa has survived the flooding of 2011 and the drought of 2012. We, as members of the Lake Manawa community, want the improvements proposed for North Lake Village to be the type of change that will provide permanent and lasting improvement to the Lake Manawa area. None of us are against improving the area in question. However, we would ask that the mayor and city council to listen to our concerns regarding traffic and safety considerations, the number of cluster housing units, the average lot size provided in the plan, and the lack of a plan for Lot 1 for the senior housing. And now just briefly, some of the traffic and safety concerns that we have. We understand the proposed plan considers the reopening of 13th Street to be an additional entrance to the proposed development. The way we look at it is the intersection of 42nd Street and 13th Street are the beginning of the project. So you just have two ways to get into the same thing, but they all converge to the same spot. Regardless of which street you enter the property, you do end up at that same spot. It should be noted that to enter the proposed development from Veterans Memorial Highway, and that'd be as you head east on the property, you're going to make a right turn in a 45-mile-an-hour per zone. So again, that's a little fast to be turning, and you're going to have people stopping. And traffic on that road's very busy right now, particularly with the I-29, I-80 construction going on. The reopening of 13th Street will also allow vehicles to turn west onto Veterans Memorial Highway. And as proposed, there is a turn lane to make that west turn, but again, you've got traffic going 45 miles an hour, and you have oncoming traffic turning into that. Again, we think, we should look at that and determine if that's safe traffic or not. The addition of 206 residential units, which as we understand it would be 96 apartments, 60 senior units, and 50 townhomes, would result in more than 400 vehicles coming in and out each day. Public school buses will need to pick up and drop off students, as well as just your basic services, trash removal and delivery and the like. There was some talk this afternoon about, how many students were going in and out of the old trailer park. I've only lived at Pelican Cove for 4 years, but there's only one school bus that went in and out of there each day that I've lived there. So there weren't that many kids living in that neighborhood, at least in the last 4 years I've been there. We believe that 11th Street, as well as the proposed reopening of 13th Street, needs to have some additional studies done to determine if the existing situation will be adequate to provide for all the traffic needs of Lake Manawa. We do not feel the current situation on 11th Street, let alone the proposed addition at North Lake Development, allows for the best access to the lake for camping, boating, water skiing, kayaking, jet skis, sailing, fishing, ice fishing, hiking, cross-country skiing. And in the 4 years I've lived there, the number of looky-loos, as we call them, that come from Omaha, just drive around the lake, drive around the neighborhoods, is more and more. I work at home part-time. It's amazing how many people drive through my neighborhood in the middle of the day. It absolutely is. And now I'm going to ask Suzanne Winter to tell you about some of our additional concerns.
Suzanne Winter, 201 South 3rd Street. I also own a little bit of property down there, and I'm here tonight to ask for not only myself, but many, many people in this community that you oppose this zoning, this development as it is proposed. At first I was so excited. I love Cellar 19. I love that area. What I thought Mark was going to propose was condos and a little nice retail area down there. And so when I heard the neighborhood get together and want to meet over it, about what was going to be proposed down there, I kept hearing words like density, high density. So I went home, I asked my husband, I called a real estate attorney, and what I was told is that the lots are really small, and that he said it's barely better than a trailer court. So then that just made my stomach upset, and as you can see, I'm pretty upset about this. But I talked to realtors, and they said it's very, very dense. They can't believe it's so dense. And then a developer said, it'll never pass. It is way too dense. So on my way to Des Moines on a Saturday, I was going to the state fair, and the friend I was riding with, she said her parents were talking about this proposal, and her dad had said, they live on the north side of town up by Lewis and Clark, a little school up there. They said, I can't believe the city wants to pack that many people on that little of an area. I would think it'd be a park. And tonight I had to cut my yoga class short because I couldn't find a sub, and so I said I was going to be talking before the city council. I'd be having to, cut the class short. And they said, what are you going to be talking about? And I told them this proposal. And they go, yeah. It was like 3 different women in there saying, yeah, I can't believe the city would want to make that dense. We're not opposed to development. It's just that it's so dense. So then I started saying, I kept hearing cluster housing, R1, cluster housing is allowed in that area. So I went on the internet and I tried to see what is cluster housing. So cluster housing has 2 very important parts. It's starting all over the country. It's on fringe areas, where it's kind of rural and city. So what cluster housing is they allow, I'm sorry. I'm making too much noise here, sorry. Cluster housing is very high density housing. It gives the developer the advantages of, shared walls, utilities, pavement. Everything is very dense, so it cuts its costs down. But the other part of cluster housing is supposed to be green space. So I have an example here. Did you bring that, Ruth? So I went online, and this is what cluster housing is supposed to look like. It's supposed to have the cluster, and then off here, it's supposed to have some green space. So I think that's basically what we're all really upset about, is there isn't hardly any green space on there. It's very, very minimal. An example of what cluster housing shouldn't be is this. This is, how can people play in their backyard? How can their kids, their grandkids, their dogs grilling? How can you do that when you don't have the proper amount of green space? So then I found an article, and then we'll...
Is that Council Bluffs?
Yes, that's
Council Bluffs.
that's High Claire.
This is the backyard of Council Bluffs in high density.
It lacks the green space. We just want some green space in this area. So then I have this article I found, and I took some of the bullets. It's just a 4-page one. The authors are, one is a woman from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, National Center for Environmental Economics. The other lady is from the University of Maryland, and the last one is from Resource for the Future. The future. We're talking about what this is going to look like in the future. So anyway, the first bullet, can you show them the first bullet here? Okay, cluster housing, rules in which houses must be located on a portion of the total land and the remainder is left as open space. This open space may be undisturbed forests, it could be pastures, it could be recreational trails, even agriculture uses could be used there. Undeveloped areas convey value not only to the residents of the subdivisions themselves, but also to the broader community. The lady in my yoga classes that say, why are you doing this? Why are you packing these in? The father of my friend, why? Why are you going to pack all these people in here? So the broader community, by preserving more of the aesthetic and improving environmental quality through habitat protection and water pollution reduction. So in conclusion, they talked about it was really surveying why would you want cluster housing versus single-family lots. Some of the things it said was households appear to value strongly their own private lots. I mean, we had cluster housing down in our area, it didn't sell, so we ended up, the developer had to sell them as single-family homes. Average house prices are lower with the clustering. I went online, and High Clare had some selling at $185 3 years ago, but the most recent one sold at $155. And lastly, I want you to look at that last bullet. Private market may under-provide open space and government intervention may be necessary. This development doesn't have the green space, and we want you to intervene. I think the clustering rules in this community probably are lax and should be looked at because we need green space. So to summarize, basically, I've told you several people that have talked to me. I think if we had the time, we could go out and the whole community would be very upset about this high density. And someday you're going to drive by there, and are you going to be proud of all the people you packed into that area without adding, you know, good green space? Lot 1, they really don't have much of a plan there. Lot 1 could maybe be a nice green space. And, you know, people got up about, you know, Kern Park. We got up about the Carnegie Library. We could actually, I think, find enough funding to have green space on the north side of the lake. How nice would that be to have more green space? You know, berms between the residential area and the housing units. We're asking for you to give us some more green space. So table this and come back with something that everybody will be really happy with. I think we'll all be happier in the long run.
Thank you.
And we do have these handouts, but we're going to save them all to the end. Mark?
Anyone else speaking this evening?
Good evening. Good evening. Mark Generou, 73 Pelican Drive, Council Bluffs. I've been a property owner down there since 2003. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. I've got a mock-up that I worked on with the gentleman over at the GIS department for the county. And what this shows is, you guys have all seen the lots, and you've seen the size of the lots. And what I've shown here is they've actually put the townhomes on the lots, and you can see the lack of yard that we're looking at here. And you know, the lot sizes are 20% smaller than the average Twin City lot. They're 30% smaller than the average Bluffs Acres lots, which is a pretty well-ran manufactured housing park in Council Bluffs. And yet I've heard many times through this discussion that lot size meets code. I've heard that lot size isn't an issue because these are townhomes. And I think that it's sad that, you know, as we're out there recruiting businesses, we're recruiting people to come to the city, that if we were to show them one or two or the top 3 developments that are going on in the city of Council Bluffs, we're going to be showing them this development. And I just don't think it reflects well on the city. You know, where in Council Bluffs or Omaha can you find 100 townhomes in the same place? I don't know. We couldn't find it. And so if you think about it, you look at, there's 20 units at Glen Oaks, there's 27 at High Clare, there's 33 at the 64 estates. Usually those are built with single-family homes attached. You know, it just seems like there isn't anyone that has been able to pull off the large-scale townhome subdivision that you're attempting here. They attempted it at Pelican Cove, and that didn't go so well. You know, in 3 years, you know, what will you do if this project stalls and you've approved R3? We've got the apartments already built on the lake on North Shore. You've got the apartments built by Leach Campers on the northwest side of it. So what happens if this project stalls? What do? You're going to tell me that it's going to be very, very easy to go R3, and so you're going to end up with apartments in the entire subdivision. Ultimately, you know, then we're probably going to be worried about density at that point, is my suspicion. You know, the asking price of this property has been about $125,000 for the last 4 years per acre. And that, if you think about that, that's 5 times what Google has paid for their property, I think at the highest price. And, you know, that may not mean much, but when you look back into why we're talking about density, why we're talking about high revenue types of uses for this property is because of that cost. And I think that cost has been tremendously overinflated. The competitive market has spoken for the last 4 years, and the property hasn't sold. So, you know, again, you've heard it through the 50 emails you received, the letters, the people that have spoke earlier. You know, Lake Manawa has been around since the early 1880s, and somehow through, you know, the hotels and the trailer parks and the floods, and, you know, the lake has survived. The lake has survived, and yet basically today the decision that you're making is, do you want townhomes and apartments on Lake Manawa, on the shores of Lake Manawa? So when we look back 20 years, we're going to have that type of development on the lake. And so, you know, I think that I just don't feel that that's the best that we can do for Lake Manawa. I don't feel that's the best we can do for Council Bluffs. I think this proposal needs to go back to the drawing board. We are tremendously in favor of something great going there. Let's get R3 off the lake. Let's find better buffer zones, and let's get a feasibility study about the traffic, and then let's get a project right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking this evening?
Ruth Munger, 107 Pelican. And I thought it was interesting. I was one who signed the petition that failed because we didn't have enough square footage. But I was wondering if the city's going to look at it and say, did the Resolution A get tabled? Because if Resolution A was passed, then that right-of-way square footage actually would change the percentages. And I do believe then that petition would actually pass with the 20%. So just kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know anything about how that works. I just thought it was interesting that A is all about the same thing that we're talking about in E, but yet that was tabled, and our petition.
It wasn't tabled. What it was is moved. There'll be a public hearing. It'll be continued on the next meeting. So it hasn't gone away.
It hasn't gone away.
No, it's just been moved to the next meeting.
Okay.
Nor does it change the law on the
It doesn't
subject.
change
It wouldn't
it.
change the requisite percentage. I can give you that assurance.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
again, I am very opposed. Again, green space. If you guys come out to the lake, put in a nice cluster, put in some green space, put a trail around it, do something that actually improves the city. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking this evening? Yes, sir.
Ern Lindeman, Lot 59, Pelican Drive. My biggest concern is they're looking to put an R3 lot in between an existing R1 and an R1 on both sides of it, or it would be surrounded by R1. And they don't even know what they want to build there yet for sure. I don't know how that could be zoned that way.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Jim Knott, 15 Westlake Village. I may be in the wrong spot to be talking here, but I thought a little background might be worthwhile. The mayor will recall that some years ago, Westlake Village was in here complaining about Julius Novak going to extend his trailer city down to Westlake Village. And we
I
took,
don't remember that.
well, we did.
Jim, you're older than I am. I can't remember.
Well, as you get older, it gets worse.
Everybody gets a chance.
Anyway, when he did that, we took him to court and so forth, and we decided we had to do something ourselves. And we took Sharon White's ideas about getting together and purchased Julius's property when he went broke there. And we had a number of people wanting to develop it, and we kept saying no to them because we couldn't get them to say what kind of buildings they were going to put down there, and we didn't want A-frames down there and weekend parties and so forth and ruin the neighborhood. And we tried like mad, and ultimately we got together and we developed the south estates below us there, along the canal, and we developed the Pelican area. And went to great expense to try and protect the area and provide a nice thing in Council Bluffs and upgrade the thing rather than let anything come down there. And almost the month that we acquired the property, we suddenly were called upon by the city to clean it up. And we took out about 100 loads of junk, Davenports, stoves, all kinds of stuff that had come from Trailer City down there, and had to clean the thing up after all those years, and we fell heir to the responsibility of cleaning it up. So that added to the expense too. And then we designed it so that we'd have duplexes and so forth, and the expenses got up, and we kept building, and we finally got a nice neighborhood down there. We had to stop with the duplexes because we couldn't sell them for the amount of money that it cost us to do it. But now we come along with, and I don't think there's a part here at all, not one of us, that wouldn't like to see that land developed nicely and upgrade the area rather than downgrade the area. There's crowding in there that's going to be automatic when you get high-rise and row houses like they have in New York and so forth. And this is not good. And those kids aren't going to have they better stick to their computers, although we all want to get outside and work and be having fun. But we do want them to build something down there that's worthwhile and that Council Bluffs can be proud about, not something about that. We've got a wonderful area at Manawa, and let's not ruin it. And let's have something down there that's worthwhile and help the kids that are going to be there. That's what I'm thinking about too, because we all raised our families down there, and it's a wonderful place if you've got the proper place for them to have enjoyment and get out and enjoy the area. So I won't say much more about it, but if you can get rid of that density and so forth, and the multi-levels and so forth, it'd be wonderful. But we went to this expense, we provided this area for these people to come down, and then we start crowding in multi-level, high-density areas. Enough said, but I'm opposed to it as it is. I'm 100% for it as we develop something we can be proud of in our Council Bluffs area.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking this evening?
My name's Sarah Bolt. I do not have a residence. The last residence that I had was 48 3rd Avenue at Wood's Lake. And I apologize that you consider us an eyesore, but I grew up on 13 acres. I always had plenty of room to run around. And the basic thing that I don't think most of you understand is I work 40 hours a week, and I can't feed my daughter. I can't clothe my daughter. We have no place to live. I had to send her away for 2 months this summer so I could make sure she had a pillow under her head and a blanket and food every day. I don't think I realized how lucky I was when I lived at Wood Lake, because you know what, I could afford it. When I first started living there, I could work 20 hours a week. She was 4 years old. The best thing about that was I could be home with her while she was growing up. Right now, I work 40 hours a week. I can't pay for nothing. Nothing. I spent 2 years trying to get away from a very abusive situation, and you know where I am right now? I had to go back to the abuser because I had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go, and I still don't. I think everybody wants a big yard. But when we lived at Wood Lake, she had friends. When we moved out, there was, 100 families there? There was plenty of room for lots more. When you have no money and you're trying to have a roof over your head, it doesn't matter how big your backyard is. If you have a ceiling, a floor, and walls, that's all that matters. If you have your kids close to you, if they can go to a great school in Lewis Central School District, if you can get up every day and look at a beautiful lake, beautiful sunsets, you know, I did not realize how lucky I had it. And all I want people to do is think about, I don't care about density, I just want people to have a place to live. Do you know why people are going to break in to that school? Because we want to be warm. We want to have some place to get dressed, to be clean, to be safe, and to be warm. So I just want everybody to remember all the families that were the eyesores, that were the embarrassment. I wasn't really thrilled to move in there when I did, but I could afford it. And towards the end, I could barely afford it, but I could still live there. And right now, like I said, we don't have any place. Every day, for the last, 6 months that I lived at Wood Lake, every day I got up and I thought, today, if they tell us that this is sold, I have 6 months to get myself together and find some place to go. It's almost been a year. The only alternative I have right now is to get another full-time job. That's 80 hours a week. What am I going to do with her? Who's going to be with her in the morning? She's just turned 12. Do you guys like to leave your kids at home alone because you're at work for 80 hours a week? I won't get any food stamps. I only get I only make like $2,000, and I get $87 a month for food stamps. We're going to the store tonight. How long do you think that $87 is going to last us? I make $10.91 an hour, and I work hard. One of the best things about being at Wood Lake was Lewis Central, and I work at Kohl's. I helped open that store. It is beautiful, the amount of stores and progress we have made. But can't we make some progress for some people that don't have $50,000 a year and brand new cars and vacations at Okoboji and a boat to go on the lake? We don't care if we have a little yard. We just want to have a home. So when you're going to do whatever, just keep in mind all the people out there that don't have any money to be able to take care of themselves or their families. We don't care how much room we have. We just want to have some place that we can afford so we can be safe. So I'm really confused because I don't know if I'm for or against or happy or sad. I think everything happens for a reason. Might not be a good reason, but there's lessons that we need to learn. And I hear all you guys talking about how you want this and you want that and you want that. All I want is to be able to have an apartment or a trailer or a box, something that I can go to that I know when I get there, we're safe. I can go to work. I can come home. I don't care if I have a big yard or a little yard. Right now, I have a car. That's the only thing, that's the only property that I have. And when we moved from Wood Lake, I owned that trailer. I owned that trailer. That was my home. I did not own the land. She had friends. The 4th of July, we barbecued. I mean, I don't understand. There was 100 families there when we moved. How many families at maximum capacity, how many families were in Wood Lake when it was full? What, 300, 400? That's plenty of room for people that need a place to stay. You know, I mean, I don't know if it's townhouses or duplexes or, you know, like the Japanese just start laying each other. All I want the community to do is remember that there are people that can't afford everything, but we're working hard and we're trying. We're doing the best we can. Life doesn't always work out the way we want it to. I have 2 college degrees and I'm working at Kohl's. And the best thing about working at Kohl's is every day people tell me they love the store. I hear praise and positive things. When I go home, I have to worry about what's going to happen to us because we're forced to be in a situation that is not safe. Her father almost killed me 4 times. He spent 4 days in jail. And that's where I had to go when we lost our home. So please just think about the people out there that don't have all the resources that you guys have. And just remember, I don't know what you want to do. Just think about all the people in the community that do need a place to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else speaking this evening?
Gary Woods, 12 Westlake Village, Council Bluffs. I'm going to probably repeat a lot of what's been said, but the first thing Mr. Watson, you mentioned this afternoon about the property had been for sale for 5 years, and so apparently it wasn't going to be right for whatever use that was. Well, I think the asking price has a great deal to do with it not selling, so as Mark Generu mentioned.
The lake deserves a quality project, one that, like everyone has said, that we want to be able to be proud of 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And concerns on that, or that would affect that, are the density of the cluster housing and the R3 zoning that's asked, especially in the south part along Shore Drive. You know, perhaps the R3 back along where Leach is one thing, but right out there along Shore Drive, I think is something of another matter. I also feel that the final approval of this preliminary request, if it is approved, should guarantee that the proposed plan will be followed and not allowed to be diluted with lower priced housing. You know, this property has had many negative comments tonight, and I can't elaborate on that, but you know, now also they have started to clear the trees, or a few months ago they did, and I think you've all been down there and see what it looks like. And this afternoon they said, well, it probably won't change for a year. You know, it must be against the city's weed ordinance of what that's like down there. So, you know, the lack of carry-through is a concern on this, and that maybe doesn't have anything to do with zoning, but it certainly has something to do with the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking tonight? Anyone's?
Hi, I'm Jamel Marino, 154 Grant Street. I'm a landlord, and I'm concerned because of all the additional rental property that would be put in here, and this housing complex would be just more competition for us private landlords. My question is, where are all the tenants going to come from? It's already very difficult for us to find even halfway qualified tenants. Seniors, and there's going to be a lot of senior housing in here, and people who are more mature tend to be the better tenants, and this apartment complex will compete with us for those people. But with brand new apartments and the extra amenities that will be offered, we won't be able to compete. The government will give the developer a lot of advantages that the rest of us landlords don't get, using our tax money, making it impossible for the rest of us to compete. There are a lot of other landlords who are upset about all the apartments that are being built in town or are planned in town. And I think personally that the site would be better used for all the public to enjoy. And I think it would be a great tourist attraction. Maybe we could set up an amusement park there like Arnold Park at Lake Okoboji. And, well, we could have housing in there too, but, you know, I'm all for green space too and trails. I think that would be great. Lake Manawa did have an amusement park in the early 1900s, and maybe we could, you know, do something like that. And I thought part of the site could be a wildlife sanctuary with migratory bird viewing. Putting all of this housing there would prevent the public from enjoying it and having access to the lake. We could extend the bicycle trails through the area and have picnic tables and a playground, and everybody could enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking this evening? Anyone speaking in favor?
I think it's my turn. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Deborah Peterson, 215 South Main Street, Council Bluffs, Iowa, appearing for the developer and the owner. I sent all of you a packet of information, which I also shared with the homeowners at Pelican Cove and Westlake Village. I'd like to have that received and filed for the record.
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you. There's a lot of concerns raised here tonight, and those are concerns. Mr. Levine has been a member of the owner company of this property for 30-some years, 40-some years. The property's been there since the 1930s as the dreaded trailer park, the eyesore, whatever you want to call it. And yes, it has been for sale for 5 or 6 or more years, and the price is the price depending upon what the owner wants to get out of it. We've actually received virtually no offers on the property, no even interest on the property at all. So this was the decision to proceed this direction. You know, it's interesting to listen to the neighboring homeowners here, because it's very similar to many other cases I've appeared before you on, including not only the gun school case, but other cases. And the one thing that I think seems to get forgotten is that it doesn't do this developer or this property owner any good to develop a bad subdivision or a bad development, because then we won't be able to sell any lots, and it will be a worse mess for us than it will be for the neighbors. So that seems to often get forgotten, that the owners and the developers put a lot of money into these things, and they're not looking to build something that's bad so they can't get their money back out of it. Profit is not a four-letter word, and they're entitled to make a profit. We have ordinances in the city that govern what needs to be done. So I'm just going to hit on a few highlights. I'm not going back over the stuff I've already given you. You know, one of the comments was maximizing their property values. I think everybody here said, oh, anything, you know, pretty much anything else will be an improvement. So it's going to maximize their property values as well. And I didn't catch the comment or understand the comment about requiring permanent improvements. The property is zoned for a mobile home park. We've checked, we can put about 150 to 160 mobile homes in there right now with no change of zoning. The only competition we have to speak of is Bluffs Acres, and so that's certainly a viable option if the owner wants to go that route. That would be temporary housing, so I don't know what the concern was about the permanent improvements, because townhomes, apartments, senior living, green space, and the pool and clubhouse area would be permanent improvements. As I mentioned to the council today, there is no requirement of a traffic study. The city has. It isn't a situation where a developer and a property owner get together with no professional guidance and come in here with this plan. This plan has been 5 years in the working, 2 or 3 different engineering firms working with various city staff to try to get something that's workable in this area to maximize the value of the property, both for the owner, for the community, and for the neighbors. So working on these things over the years, we've had to already look at those things. Subdivisions I've done before have specifically called out and required by city staff traffic studies when that's warranted due to the amount of traffic that will be generated and the collector roads that are involved. In this case, you have Veterans Memorial Highway, which has recently been substantially improved by the state to go from 2 lanes undivided to 4 lanes divided with the necessary left-hand turn lanes. The primary intersection granting access to the park, Pelican Cove, Westlake Village, and North Lake Village is a controlled signal. Those are computerized now. We can control them to take care of the traffic that's there. That's why the city is not recommending a traffic study. The school kids, you know, maybe Mr. Northwell's only lived there for a couple of years, but in the almost 30 years that I've represented the park and talking to Mr. Levine, who's been around for longer owning the park, we've had way more school kids than that. At the last 4 years, we have downsized the park. We've had numerous utility issues, numerous city issues, all kinds of problems down there. And the homes down there could not be moved from the park due to the sizing and their age and that kind of thing. So that the reports have gone down. In fact, the city Public Works has a report for me from the last 5 or 8 years of housing down there, how many people live there, because we looked at some other things there. So traffic and utilities, I'm not a traffic or utility person, and nor are you. That's why we have the city staff, and Randy Fail, the engineer, is here too. If you have engineering questions, he'll answer them. You know, Ms. Winter raised some points, and I always wanted to jump up and say, Your Honor, objection, that's hearsay, but then I realized we weren't in court. But those people aren't here to give their 2 cents, and you know, Mr. McKeever can stand up here and tell you how many number of calls he's received from people who want to know when are the houses going to be available, when is the apartments going to be, what's going to be the rent, what's going to be the prices. So there is interest. So similar to the North Broadway property, it's just different areas, different people. Your job is to represent everybody and do the best job. You have a set of ordinances that you have to work with. And because we have been working with the city for over 5 years, this development meets all of those ordinances. Cluster subdivision is what you define it to be in your ordinance. Our ordinance defines how many houses you can have per acre and how much green space you have to have. This subdivision meets that requirement with the open space, the green space, the clubhouse, and swimming pool area. All those things are met. So while the neighbors may say that they want to perceive or see more green space being necessary, that's not what you have told developers all along with the city ordinance. You've said this is what you need, and here we are, we're bringing you that. Let's see. The apartments proposed are only 3 stories. They're not going to be a high rise. The property will have to be maintained in order with the weeds. And as far as the landlord situation is concerned, my office represents a number of landlords in the community, and Mr. McKeever is also involved in a couple landlord situations, and most of the occupancy rates are well in excess of 90%. I think that the developer is taking the risk here, and the owner is taking the risk where they have gone out and done the market analysis to determine, are there people needing to rent these types of apartments? Are there people who want to build these townhomes in the range of $190,000 to $290,000? And then the comment about hurting public access to the lake, we don't have any lake access. We're not closing off any lake access, and our property is private property. So there's really no change to, the public access to the lake. The other questions I raised that were addressed, there were some questions raised at the Planning Commission, and then several of you council members have forwarded questions to me or to Mr. McKeever, and I tried to answer all of those. I want to reiterate, there is no lake access to Lake Manawa. As far as the request for the postponement on the right-of-way vacation, when I visited with Mr. Wade, he suggested that we try to have that worked out with all the property owners on the north and south side to figure out who wanted to get what, so we could do that before an ordinance was passed. And 2 of the property owners one is out of town and one hasn't called us back yet. So we decided that it would be best to make the record clear. So that was the only purpose of that change. I've laid out the density information clearly. That complies with the city ordinances, the access as we've discussed. I think one of the important things, we hear a lot, oh yeah, we'd like to have an amusement park, we'd like to have single-family housing, we'd like to have high-rise condos, we'd like to have a lot of things, but just like Mr. Watson pointed out, write a check, property's for sale. If the city wants to put a park in there, we'll look at an offer if you want to make it tonight. So, that's the situation. The property is available. We need to make some kind of a return on it, and we have tried to sell it for a number of years, been unable to do so. So this is working with the city, trying to come up with a plan that best works. And in fact, I thought my math skills were a little tough here on this, and I did the actual calculations using the low-end values on the property, and you're talking about basically a $30 million property tax base increase over what the property is currently assessed at and what it was assessed at as a trailer park. So you are looking at a lot of potential there. And there's been some comments about, well, you don't even know what the senior living is going to look like. Well, the bottom line, and one of the questions raised today during study session was about the timeline. And the timeline is, when this is approved by the council, it'll probably be September before we get through the next reading, the ordinances are all filed, et cetera. Then you're looking at a 3 to 4 month time period, during which time the engineers will draft the construction plans and work with the city to obtain approval of where all the utilities and public improvements, fire hydrants, street lights, all that good stuff is going to go. And to get that done and get the permitting for that is probably not going to take the rest of the year. So conceivably, we could start some construction in January. We all know in January, the white stuff comes, and sometimes we can do stuff and sometimes we can't. So at that point, it'll just kind of be weather dependent. When spring gets here, assuming we don't have an incredibly wet spring, we'll be going full force ahead, because the requirement is that we come back to you within a year of your approval of our preliminary plan for approval of our final plat. At that time is the time we'll submit the covenants, We'll know where all the easements are located. We'll provide the dedication of the streets and public improvements to the city. Any public improvements that aren't done at that point will have to be bonded for the phase that's being approved. So probably you're looking at that full year, which is the whole point of the ordinance, because it takes us a year to get everything approved and done. One of the other questions that was raised today was about the market rate apartments, and the council asked if my clients are willing to agree to basically, as Mr. Wade referred to it, as contract zoning, that if the zoning and the plat is approved, that they would enter into an agreement whereby they would have only market rate apartments and or senior living, and the answer is yes. We did look that through, so if you want to add that as part of a condition for our approval, we're happy to have that. Some questions about safety, traffic, emergency evacuations, water traffic, air quality. Those are all things that have to be asked and presented to the city, and they have been, and the city people, in accordance with the codes, your staff has said, yes, your development meets those. I do want to clarify, Mark, you want to hold this up for me? The phasing. The first phase is phase 1, which is the lake view lots here, which are the townhomes, and lot 1, senior living, lot 2, green space and clubhouse, and lot 3, the apartments. You can show that to the public if you will. That's our first phase, so we'll be getting the lakefront done first and the multifamily. And then the rest of the lakefront is in phase 2 with some more townhomes, and then the last phases are the last townhomes. If you have any questions, Mr. McKeever is here. He is working with the developer. As the developer, Mr. Levine is here. He's the owner, or one of the owners of the company that owns the property. We have drawings of the townhomes, which I submitted to you. And Randy Fail is here. He's our engineer, and we're happy to answer any questions. We would certainly like to see this approved and go on to third reading and seek your approval of this. And I won't repeat myself, but 2 or 3 items down the agenda, we have the one other item. So they all go together, so we would seek your approval. Questions?
Are there any questions? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and I don't know, because I think it'll probably take an answer, so I'm going to make a statement question.
Okay.
You know, I understand the people here are concerned about the unknown. And every time I've answered several emails to this in the same vein, every time multifamily's involved, we get this radius of homeowners that are, you know, what happens if it becomes low-income housing, it isn't what the developer proposed. Once you change the zoning, it can be anything they want it to be. You know, I've also said in those emails, you know, of the probably 10 to 12 multifamily complexes, it always happens this way. And in the 10 to 12 multifamily complexes, and I know when I say this, I'll probably get somebody that'll come tell me that I was wrong, but in the 10 to 12 multifamily complexes, people I know very well have stood in front of me and told me that this is not a good thing, and I've never had anyone, once the development's done, ever come to me and say, you were wrong, I was right, I should have been afraid. But in that vein, then, one of the things that we can do is to mitigate the risk of something unforeseen happening. I know some of the people in the area are concerned about the senior living. There's not a defined developer yet. They're looking for a developer. What happens if that doesn't happen? Does the purpose change? And so at the study session this afternoon, and we sit here from 3:45 until 7 o'clock, as many of you are out in the hallway, working on gaining and understanding what's going on. And in that study session, which some who are here tonight attended, I said, you know, to the developer, would you be willing to agree that if you can't find a senior housing developer, would you agree to limit the R3 site to market rate rents. And so I would like to make a proposal, and Dick tells me this is the appropriate way to do it in the public hearing, that the R3 on the south side of the development that currently is proposed for senior housing be either that senior housing or 100% market rate apartments if no developer can be found for the senior housing. And I don't think that faces the lake. I think it faces 11th Avenue and
That's acceptable to the developer and the owner.
So do we need a second? I'll second that.
Talking about this property right here on the lake.
That's lot one.
That's what you want to do.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
yep, that's what I want to do.
Take light lake property and put it as R3.
So there'd be
And it could be
no decks or balconies for the people, or windows for them to look out on the lake then? That's not lakefront property, that's not lakefront property.
We got to get
My
this.
taxes
Well,
are way too high.
Sir,
because there's a
sir,
road between
sir,
my
we're,
lot.
sir, the person at there is done. After that, you can get them to speak. Well, I guess you can't. You already have, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else speaking in favor this evening?
We've made Mark McKeever, 5102 Ballard Circle. I want to first of all thank each and every one of you council people for taking the time to come down, drive through, walk around the site, go over the plans, and ask all the questions that you needed to ask, and all the emails that we've received, and we've answered all those questions. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come down and do that, and I'm just asking for your vote. You know the type of development that we're putting in, and we've guaranteed you it'd be all market rate. I don't understand for the life of me what's wrong with $190,000 to $290,000 townhomes. It's not a $500,000 development to put single-family houses on. You've got the road access right up against the lake with commercial property to the north of it. We've gone through this, I don't know how many times, and answered calls and questions. I've invited all these people to have packets. We sent it to them. I've offered my services to go down and go through the park with them and go over it, and only a couple of them showed up. So this is a quality development. We worked on plans for 5 years now, working with the city, and the density is half of what used to be there. So I'm just asking for your vote tonight. And the tax bases, the job creation, the cleanup of the entrance of Lake Manawa, this development right here is at the quality that meets any development that's ever been put in this town. And if you have any questions for me, I'll answer them for you.
Any questions?
I have a question for you, Mark. Following all the conversation that has been going on this evening, and my brain's a little scrambled, so I've been trying to keep up.
understand.
But Lot 1, it seems to me from what I've been hearing that the development as proposed, and this is also based on conversations I've had, and I visited the site, but Lot 1 seems to be the biggest sticking point that I'm hearing. And there is a fear of the unknown. And you and I talked when I was down
Sure.
there. I don't know if you have any of the artists and rendering of what it could be. My concern is if it's not senior housing, and then there's 2 or 3 story multifamily, that would, in my opinion, be a little bit too dense for Lot 1. And would you be open to more of a townhome or something just in the Lot 1 area?
No. Lot 1 is right here at the beginning of the development.
Right.
Lot 3 is over here. you have to drive through both of those developments, Lot 1 and Lot 3, to even get to the townhome development.
Right.
The last thing we're gonna do is do something that's not market rate, first class, nice landscaping. Nobody is gonna drive in between Lot 1 and Lot 3 to go buy one of these $190,000 to $290,000 townhomes if we don't do our job right.
I'm not saying it won't look good. I'm just talking about the density in Lot 1, at the entrance. At the entrance on West Shore Drive. That's what I'm talking about.
The problem is that, if I can respond,
Yeah.
the West Shore Drive abuts that property. We don't have any access off of that, and that is not a place to be to place townhomes. That's why when the road turns, that's where the townhomes start,
So there's not access on the backside?
over here, yes. But that's pretty wide, comparatively speaking,
Right.
for depth. Right?
Correct.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else speaking in favor this evening? That ends the public hearing. Was the council's pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion on the floor and a second to approve. Any,
Now, the amendment at this time then,
Oh.
regarding market value rather?
Yeah, do you want to amend my motion to do the market rate?
I thought we did that during the.
no.
No, it has to be part,
Yeah, it has to be a-
actually part of the ordinance.
You want to put amendment out? Is that,
It has to be both places.
Matt, are you putting amendment out?
I'm not sure procedurally what,
Well, we have an ordinance on the floor and a second to approve. You want an amendment. Amend it now to.
You have it in the record, they
He
agree
mentioned-
to it,
but he
but you
mentioned that
haven't
during
made a
the public
formal
hearing.
motion.
okay, make a motion that there is an amendment to the agreement that if the senior housing, that the developer would intent to do senior housing were to change, that because it is R3, only market rate rents would be applicable to that rezoned property.
Second.
And that will actually become a part of the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second.
And the intent on that is to mitigate the risk. I mean, that I've gotten questions from homeowners down there that say they're gonna do senior housing. What if they don't do senior housing? It could be anything. And so that motion mitigates that risk that it could be anything.
So for me to get this straight, so in the senior housing, there would be X number of people, I can't remember the number, 60, 90, whatever it is. I'm sorry?
60.
60. So the market rate apartments, would that also include 60?
Probably less.
Probably less?
Hasn't been laid out and determined. It's whatever meets code for that size of
For
property.
that size of property. So it wouldn't be like 300 people in there?
No,
Mm-mm.
no.
It would be similar to the north lot that's laid out in 3 or 4 buildings.
It's not as big as that. We can't get 4 buildings.
Right.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Now the ordinance as amended. Any discussion?
And I just want to say thank you, I mean, to all the you that did come out. I mean, we always definitely value inputs, and it's been a tough decision. I mean, a lot of time I spent reading emails, talking to the developer, talking to the city staff that worked at the developer. But, I mean, and we did, my opinion changed when I went and looked at the lot. That lot is not comparable at all to Pelican Cove or to some of you that are on the lake. You know, there's no lake access. You can barely see the lake from several spots, if not probably over half, just because of the way it's laid out. You're butting up to a commercial development. I mean, Leach they keep their site very clean. It's very well kept, but it's still a commercial development. I don't know that you're gonna have anyone that's gonna wanna put an expensive house right next to commercial development. And as for the talk of, the yards are small, some people don't want the maintenance. Older couples or younger single people don't want the large yards. They don't want the maintenance. So this is an option for those that still wanna live on the lake and very nice. I mean, to me, 190 to 280 is still a very nice home. And a very nice home, we're giving the option. We're trying to expand housing. And I just want to thank you for standing up and talking earlier. I know that had to be tough, and I really do appreciate you. It's something we need to be reminded of, that we need to think of everybody and not just those that develop. So thank you for doing that.
And I just wanted to explain, because I know there was some confusion. 4A dealt with vacating an existing right-of-way that is within that subdivision. 4E deals with the rezoning to multifamily housing, the R3 designation. In 7A deals with the cluster subdivision. So I know some people said, well, was waiting to get up on 7A. So coming up is 7A with the cluster subdivision component.
Well, I would like to say thank you as well for folks coming out on both sides of the issue. Like, I responded in a lot of emails. There were three things that I thought were valid concerns: aesthetics, access, and density. I looked at the property. I looked at the proposal. Councilmember White had asked for prior minutes of when the folks here from other subdivisions, prior developments, plans were approved. So I did take a look at those as to see what people said about where you now live, and looking at all those things, I want to say, first of all, the lake is, under our state constitution, owned by everybody. You can't own a body of water in the state of Iowa, believe it or not. The public has an absolute right to use it. And I don't think anyone's saying they don't. I think that ought to be remembered. It belongs to everybody. And it's still a free country, and so the purpose of zoning, as I see it, is to try to come up with a way by which we come to orderly placing of property. But it's not intended, in my view, to allow some people to have the ability to be someplace and other people not to be. And I look at this as an example of homes that are, I think I'd have a hard time affording a home in that subdivision, I'd like to think that they're not inexpensive. I'd also like to say that we have a real problem with affordable housing on two different kinds in our community. The first one, those folks who need a place to live, is not addressed by this proposal tonight. We have a lot of those. I hope to see more of those. And all over the community, because we shouldn't, to put it crudely, put all the poor people together and everyone else gets protected from them, because that's, in my view, silly and really seems un-American, in my view. As I look at it, because we're all one people, so as I look at this subdivision, $200,000 homes, townhomes, they're done all over the country. There are hundreds of examples across the river. We just, quite frankly, were a community that never had enough money and people that could afford those. And we tended to be more of a rural community historically, so we had a lot of acreages on the edges of our community. We've reached a point now, and part of it's just demographic changes. There have been a lot of stories in papers across the country. As baby boomers retire, they're wanting to go to true townhomes. That is, they don't want 3 acres to mow. Young people, and I'd like to think I'm still in that group, don't all, like me, like to have an elaborate yard that takes forever to mow and weed. Most of them, I understand, like to go out and have fun and have a life rather than trimming hedges. But again, it's a free country, and if folks want to spend $200,000 on that and they want to be near the lake like you are, I don't see how I can tell them no. We can't create another park for the benefit of a homeowners association. As we look at the 63,000 people in the community who pay taxes, our job is not to do something that you could have done yourself. Our job is to look out for what makes the most sense for our community as a whole. And indeed, when Pelican Cove got approved, I see in those records, again, thanks to Councilwoman White, who got them, that we, as a council, before I was on it, but I say we as the council, approved a major exception to the zoning to allow you to have your lots at all. They're way too deep under the code. They're more than 3 to 1. but they made sense for what the developer wanted, and presumably if you bought a house in that subdivision, it made sense to you. And if you go back and look and ask folks, I don't think you're going to find everyone around that area supported it. But yet we did it. And I imagine you're grateful if you live there. Now, the apartments at $1,000 a month are about the only thing that I can think of that would be built next to a giant lot that's holding semi-trucks. I just don't see how you're going to get a developer, or even more importantly, a homeowner, spend $200,000 to buy a single-family home, detached or not, right next to, facing out onto hundreds of semis. So what you're asking, the unintended consequence is you're asking the developer to build lots in which nothing will ever get sold, and you'll have vacant houses. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't, if I had it, I wouldn't spend $200,000 on a house to look on 200 trailers or semi-trucks. If you look around town, you'll see the zoning is set up so that areas of commercial or industrial use tend to have apartments right next to them, and then you tend to have duplexes, and then you tend to have single family. You don't find many semi-trucks next to detached single family homes, and there's a reason. It doesn't sell. That whole area, right now you have a commercial area that this will buffer you from. Right next to you, you'll have $200,000 townhomes, each half of it. $30 million of property valuation to help keep up our streets and roads. Right now, you've got a swamp. So the solution, it's been for sale for years, and indeed it has, I checked. Since no one else apparently wanted to buy it in our free country, somebody bought it, is willing to spend upwards of, to improve an area, upwards of $30 million for good quality homes. We lose so many of our young people to Omaha, to put it bluntly, because we have homes, a lot of them worth $65 and a lot of them worth $250. If you're in your 20s or 30s and you've got a kid or two, how do you afford, unless you're handy and want to live in a $65,000 house in a neighborhood that may have some issues, or I don't know how you spend $250,000 to live in a cul-de-sac subdivision on the eastern edge of town. I don't, so we lose them to Omaha. So we lose accountants, doctors, lawyers, nurses, school teachers. If you look at most of them, they don't live in our city because they can't find a place that's good and that they can afford. These people can then stay there. I'm sorry to get long, but I wanted to explain there were so many questions raised, and I really wanted you to know I spent a lot of time looking at it, but every time I did, it all came back to this makes sense. And I think in 5 or 10 years, you'll agree with me. And so I completely support it.
I do want to tell everybody how much I appreciate the emails. I did try to respond to everybody's emails. If I didn't respond to yours, I apologize. I did attempt to respond to all of them and made pretty clear my views on zoning, because most of my emails either had to do with, the type of apartment, the, aesthetic value of the apartment, or maybe whether there was any confidence that the developer would be able to complete the project. And, zoning to me is very much about the land. It just has to be. You can't say that an R3 is appropriate as long as I like the way the building looks. It's appropriate. R3 is appropriate or it's not. And that's just the way I view zoning. I don't think you can say it's only okay if I like what you're doing. I think that R3 is an appropriate zoning. I've looked at the buffering, and for those of you, I didn't realize that your bigger concern was the one at the front. So on those emails that I didn't respond to that portion. I look at that though, and I see that you've got a parcel of land that's on a major entry road into a park. It's going to have a lot of traffic. Again, the market value of a home there, and I assure you, I know of what I speak, is not going to be great. And the developer could choose to put infill housing in there. But from many of the emails I got, you would not be very happy with that at all. So I'm really not looking at it as who the developer is. Ownership changes. If one of you were to buy this parcel, you might want to do something different on the R3. So I'm not going to make the decision based on whether or not I think the developer is a good one, whether I think the building he's going to put there is the right building. I make my decision on whether an R3 is an appropriate zoning for the surrounding uses and the future development in an organized manner for the area So I will be supporting the zoning change because I do believe that it is very appropriate.
Any other discussion? We have a ordinance, has a first and second, and amended. Any other discussion?
Well, I guess I'm going to throw my final 2 cents in. You know, I was thankful for all of the comments, the emails, the invitation to come to your meeting. You had some concerns, I had some current concerns, I had some questions. Mark, thank you for answering questions and addressing concerns. Lot 1 still concerns me, but if we have that caveat in the amendment that would further protect that, to me, it does make sense, not to repeat what Councilmember Watson said, but, you know, the R3 is in the back towards the industrial, and then you phase out into the townhomes towards the frontage, and some do have views of the lake, some don't. I kind of also look at what the developer plans to put in that, not just the R3, R1, and I think the developer has come up with some good designs. Again, I still remain concerned about Lot 1 because that is an unknown, and I share your concerns, the fear of the unknown, because you don't know what's coming, but I put faith in the process. I put faith in our ordinances and the things that the city requires when a development goes in, and the fact that this meets all the city requirements. I don't see how we can say no, because we don't really have a basis to say no. So I just really appreciate everyone's comments, your participation in the process, and I hope that at the end of the day, we're all happy with our neighbors and we enjoy life.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Madam Clerk?
Resolution 7A, Resolution 13-204, granting preliminary subdivision plan approval for a 103-lot residential cluster subdivision, including 5 outlots to be known as North Lake Village.
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Is there discussion?
I'd like to make an amendment, because again, there was some expressed concern about the size of the lots, that this is a cluster subdivision, and the cluster subdivision approval will be based on construction of townhomes with common walls. If the development plan changes from that the lots would need to be replatted or would need new approval through Community Development Department. I don't know if I said that very well, but.
Is that an amendment? Does that need to be an amendment? Or?
That is amendment.
Second. Okay, second.
Okay,
Oh,
now
sorry.
discussion on the amendment.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
wait, we're going to
She didn't hear
explain
me.
the amendment.
That guy was talking.
Okay, that's
All
what
right,
I
you wanna-
couldn't hear.
All right, well, again, there's been some concerns, the lots are smaller because they're townhome lots. There's been some concern expressed by the neighbors that what if, in the banking business, it's called the rate of absorption, how quickly do townhomes sell if what happens in Pelican Cove happens, where the townhomes don't sell rapidly and the developer changes course and says, I can't wait 15 years for the townhomes to sell out. I need to do something to regain my investment. I'd earlier asked Community Development, could they build a single-family residential home on these small lots? And his response was he thought they could. And so my amendment is that if at some point the development plan changes from townhomes, that it goes back through community development to redesign the remaining lots, much like they did in Pelican Cove, to take the 2 lots and put them together to make it a one single-family home lot, so that it's not that packed in.
Thank you for reading that.
So that's an amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? public can get up if you want to. Nobody wants to. You're all tired. Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Now the ordinance as the resolution as amended.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Ordinance is on first reading. Ordinance 6192, amending Chapter 13.01, Uniform Administrative Code by amending Section 13.01.204.4, consistency of the Board of Appeals.
Motion to pass the ordinance second consideration.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Ordinance on second reading. Ordinance 6187, amending the zoning map by designating the Jean and Inez Lewis Regant House located at 517 South 4th Street as a local historic landmark.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to waive third reading.
Second.
Second.
Is there discussion?
I thought we were gonna do that.
We're speeding up.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Resolution.
The ordinance passes the law.
Resolution 13-205, approving the City of Council Bluffs analysis of impediments to fair housing
know.
choice plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Resolution 13-206, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Stay Build Construction Company for flood recovery project number 27.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Resolution 13-207, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with AMEC Environmental and Infrastructure Incorporated for engineering services in connection with value engineering study for levy certification of the federal levy system.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
nay.
Resolution 13-208, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Iowa Electric for the Bennett Madison Avenue fiber extension.
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Applications for permits and cancellations at A1 through 9.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That ends the printed agenda for this evening. Anyone from the audience like to speak with the council?
Don Angroth, 304 Glen Avenue. I just want a little clarification from Matt here. Your market rate, is your distinction for market rate apartments that you discussed earlier on your amendment, is that as compared to subsidized housing?
Yes.
Okay, so that was your distinction? Okay, I got it.
Anyone else this evening? Anyone from the council this evening?
I just want to again thank everybody for coming down. I really have a lot of admiration for anyone who will get up, come down to City Hall and tell us what you think and what you need in your community. And I might not always agree, but I will always respect you, and I appreciate you very much taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Anyone else? With that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Stand adjourned.